Camera's rolling. Camera set. Action.
Good morning, Dr. Enrico Melson.
Good morning.
Warm welcome on behalf of your audience here on YouTube. Here today, once again, to be able to be in the company of your brilliance as you educate us regarding the 7 pillars of integral education meta systems. Today, you will be providing us with the overview and the definition of education for genius, the 5th pillar. Thank you, Dr. Enrico Melson.
Thank you. Firstly, when we examine that term genius, what we find is that there's usually some kind of awkwardness in utilizing that term. Most people tend to think of genius as something that is foreign to them. They tend to think of it as a nice, flattering term to use. Yet even when it is used, most of the time it is used with respect to it as a qualifier of a particular effort, a particular accomplishment, or a particular system or method. That person is a genius offensive coordinator on the gridiron in football. That person is a mathematical genius or a musical genius. So we have a tendency to utilize that term, yet in a way that qualifies it and actually diminishes it by making it usually specific to a particular or narrow band of human activity. Occasionally we apply it in a larger sense to a few people who we can consensually identify as being geniuses. Yet those are few and far between, because even the most famous geniuses, so to speak, of history, many of them, if not most of them, it is an aspect of their character, their life, that we attribute the genius moniker to. So what we're talking about in education for genius is actually something that is far more expansive than that which has been traditionally referenced as genius. We're speaking about the enhancement of intelligence as an experience, as a flow, as a dimension of consciousness. Genius, high intelligence. And we're also speaking about the genius of all the aspects of being. So we're not simply speaking about the genius with respect to certain subjects or the ease of learning certain methods. We're speaking the genius of character. We're speaking of emotional intelligence and emotional genius. We're speaking of such genius as itself a band of frequencies, of energetic frequencies. We're speaking of the construct of resonance. Resonance with that band, that spectrum of frequencies, so that as energetic beings, our psycho-spiritual axis can access those frequencies such that we can tap into source knowledge, the cosmos, tap into nature. These also represent aspects of genius. So education for genius, therefore, is not simply so that one can cultivate a prodigio orientation to a given subject area. At the same time, we also know that in the education of the whole person, when we're talking about the totalistic development of a being, that as one is experiencing this state called genius, that they are not themselves becoming distorted. Because we know that, sometimes even tragically so, many of the people that we have identified as geniuses in history have also themselves been quite substantially imbalanced with respect to the overall harmonization of their lives. They have been great prodigies in one area and suffered tremendously in other areas. Their eccentricities sometimes have been more exemplified by perversities, even at times, or the great potential for contributing in a very positive way to society and to the ecosystem has at times become diverted into more destructive applications of their genius and their prodigious capacities. Witness the atomic bomb itself. So we know then that education for genius has to deal with a lot greater than those familiar aspects of what we call heightened human performance. Education for genius will also be the subject of another set of such modules here in the video submissions in YouTube and elsewhere. I talk about the 7 steps to genius, for example. This is something which has come to me, downloaded, you can say, from source. Most of the information that comes to me nowadays does come through these channels. It is not something to brag about, it is something simply to state this is the mechanism. I do not read many books nowadays. I am given the information in the flow of cosmic intelligence. I am given access to that field of intelligence by virtue of having cultivated this way of being, by virtue of knowing the truth that we are all genius, that we are all these multidimensional beings. Know it and live it, be it, and discover that indeed genius is as natural as breathing. It is as universal as our common DNA. It is indeed what has been ordained for us and what has been divined for us, what has been implanted within us. And it is indeed the very nature of nature herself, so ingenuously organized. Thus, the more that we are teaching how to become in unity with nature, in harmony with nature, and when we are extending that to an integral construct and perspective, then we are able to experience the many different aspects of intelligence of our being, and to optimize that experience of those aspects of intelligence. And this indeed flows into the overall combined experience of well-rounded, holistic genius. So what are those 7 steps to genius? Again, without a whole lot of elaboration on any one of them, I will simply delineate them, comment very briefly. We will go into much more depth on them in subsequent videos. The first of such steps is what I call the education in human values. More so than simply the values that humans hold for one another, it is really the values-based structure that is integral and that is holistic, because we cannot speak of human values without understanding our relationship as global citizens, without understanding our relationship to the greater environment. So the education of human values is education of systems and how we approach systems, how we hold them dearly. Also contained within that process of introduction and structuralizing a curriculum around values, we find that we elicit conflicts in the value systems that we have. But what are some of those basic values? How about respect for intelligence? How about honoring all? How about the right of all that exists to exist? How about nonviolence? How about harmony and resonance? How about moderation? How about compassion? Kindness? These are human values, and these are also cosmic laws. So as we address those at level 1, we can see that we are bringing about an orientation that addresses not only our inner development, it also addresses, once again, our relationship to the greater environment. Having done so, we get to level 2. That's step number 2. That is, once there have been these values explored, there comes a need to resolve the inconsistencies and the incongruities in different values hierarchies. And so by doing that, and in order to do that, we must utilize the best of the methods of mind-body-spirit integration, conflict resolution, healing, and awareness enhancement. So these are very, very powerful methods. They're very fast methods. We do not want to elicit paranoia and conflicts in individuals by exposing them to values. They discover that they have sometimes inconsistent values, hierarchies. They go sometimes into conflict within themselves, and now they're basket cases. We don't want to do that, and we're not going to do that. So there are many tried and true methods. We'll elaborate much more on those methods as we go further. The next tier is energetic integration, the bioenergetic integration. It is not enough to simply have a theoretical understanding of values or to have a cognitive displacement and corrective approach to values incongruities and conflicts. What is happening up here has to be integrated into the wholeness of our biomatrix. And there are means by which we do that, and we would teach those. That's also important because that's where there is a sense of permanence, of change, and indeed of healing. The next one is what we call environmental harmonization. Environmental harmonization, once again, when we go back to pillar number 1, remember the 7th dimension of being is environment, spirit, consciousness, energy, mind, emotion, body, environment, and time. Environmental harmonization, therefore, becomes an important part of creating the environment and the dynamics which promote the access to the field of genius and the expansion and the resonance capacities within our being, so that we can hold our attention and our intention upon those vibrations, those streams of consciousness, which then we can express as genius. What is necessary to bring about that harmonization of the environment to promote these previously mentioned 3 aspects of the 3 steps, and what will be the subsequent 3 steps in the education for genius. As we move to step 4, step 4 then is the introduction of higher constructs, ideas and principles which, had they come straight in as discussion topics where there have been incongruities at the previous levels, would not be well understood, would not be well integrated. You just can't come in and start talking about consciousness and about genius especially, and about expanded capacity and about cosmic laws to people who themselves are conflicted about how they see themselves. So we bring in at that tier 5, we bring in the higher constructs. Theoretical, yes, on one level, but more than theory now, because they are at this level able to be integrated into what we call a greater praxis. The integration of theory and practice is what we call praxis. So these higher constructs now guide the praxis of an individual in this environment of education for genius. We get to number 6. And number 6 then is the introduction of superlearning technologies. Superlearning technologies are, unfortunately, almost secrets to the vast majority of people, and they certainly represent challenges and sometimes anathema to those who are entrenched in traditional dumbing down educational system approaches, to those who would feel threatened by that which can demonstrate orders of magnitude of improvement and impact in development, in demonstrable performance by students over what have been the incumbent and the legacy systems of education. Yes, these would be threatening to many, but essential that we must have learning technologies which are indeed super learning technologies. And again, we will go into much more detail as to what that means and what it looks like. But it is super learning technologies that are essential to allow us to accelerate our learning and our applied intelligence so that we can be congruent with and in pace with what are also these developments and advancements in technology overall. What are the necessary paradigms that have to be creatively, collectively generated for the benefit of the planet as a whole, for bringing about the necessary solutions to the ecological and systemic imbalances that we know exist within the planet, within our society, and our relationship to the cosmos. This is also part of that approach of superlearning technologies. Finally, we get to the 7th step, and that 7th step to genius is the realm of choice and direction of application. In other words, once upon one has acquired facility within the previous 6 steps, the next step is to choose how you are to walk and step out there into the world, how you are to live your life, what it is that you wish to immerse yourself in for further learning or for service or for even recreation, creativity, industry, how you will apply yourself, and the many approaches that are necessary in terms of providing educational guidance to people to be able to have a sense of truth, a sense of alignment, so that they can declare and choose and thus apply themselves with this genius that they have been guided to a new level of familiarity and internalization with such genius. These are the 7 steps to genius, which are core and foundational to the 5th pillar, education for genius. Much more to come. Again, I hope this is useful. Thank you.
Dr. Enrico Melson, once more, thank you very much on behalf of your audience here at YouTube. Thank you.
Thank you.